Builder family, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. You saw the thumbnail. It is a modern console cabinet, what we're working on today. This is going to be my first full build video for a piece of furniture, so it's going to be a little bit long of a video, but I appreciate you sticking with me. And let's get into this build. It's going to be a good one. All right, first things first, I like to start with my 3D model. So here's the main structure of the cabinet. Of course, there's no color, there's no handles or anything like that, grain direction, but directionally, this is what I'm going for in this build. Very familiar starting point here at the planer. Need to knock off that top layer of stain and finish. This was still some reclaimed lumber. I actually had a little bit, I had to buy a couple boards, but for the most part, it was all reclaimed. So knocked off that stain and that finish. And then it was pretty much ready. So a lot of these boards were already cut to size, so I didn't need to do a ton of work there, but went ahead and started to glue them up, and we were all good. I did the same thing that I do with pretty much all my panels here. I just wiggle the board back and forth. That's just going to allow that glue to spread out, and also made this oversized. So that's why you see that the boards aren't perfect on each end. I just need them to be pretty close on at least one end. I'm gonna trim these to size with my circular saw, but pretty simple stuff here. Just throw them in the clamps, and then got some of my smaller trigger clamps to go over the top and make sure that it's nice and flush and flat, and the gaps are closed in pretty nicely. I gotta be real. Sanding sucks. Sanding is probably one of the worst things to building anything, right? Sanding a project is not ideal. Nobody likes sanding, but it is very, very, very necessary for you to get a good finish and a good end product. So sanding, this is the only clip I'm gonna show sanding. It does suck. Nobody likes doing it, but you have to. It's mandatory for you to get a good finish. Once I got everything sanded, I can get my first look at kind of what it was looking like. Next thing, I needed to connect the panels to the sides because in that last clip they weren't. So I just used some pocket holes as stretchers. I put pocket holes on the bottoms of the cabinets, the bases, and also on the stretchers. So on the bottom, they'll be on obviously the bottom, and then on the top stretchers, they'll be on the top. But whenever I secure the top, you won't be able to see the pocket holes from the side, top, anywhere. You won't ever see the pocket holes. So just went with that. Pretty simple, easy way to put them together. In all reality, you probably don't even need pocket holes. Glue would be fine for this, but just in terms of holding the cabinet together, I usually go with pocket holes and glue. This also gives a pretty good visual of those pocket holes. So they are going to be on top. So once I secure them in, you'll see me do here in a second. Once I put the top panel of the cabinet on, you won't ever see these pocket holes. So even looking from the inside, you won't know they're there, which is what I'm going for, kind of hiding these. Now, I know this isn't a great visual, but this is how I secured the pocket holes. Just screwed them into the bottom, into the side panels, flush, and then I could flip it up and kind of see what everything was looking like, how it was coming together. The side closest to, I guess, you would be the back. So that's why everything is flush and there's a little bit of an overhang in the front. I think a lot of people fail to realize how simple cabinets really are. They're just boxes, right? You're just building boxes and that's it. So for me specifically here, I wanted to have the shelf in the middle adjustable. I just went with one shelf. I could probably add another one later, but to start out, I really just needed one shelf. And so just pinhole jig from Craig makes it quick and easy. The hardest part really is just figuring out where you want to start. Do you want to start on the fourth hole, fifth hole, sixth hole, up, whatever? And just whatever you figure out, just be consistent with that across every side, every hole that you make, and everything's going to line up perfectly. So I like using this jig. It's easy, it works, it's functional, and it keeps things nice and straight and flat. I had to get a little creative on the other side. Of course, I couldn't put the jig all the way up to the back, so I just popped off the little tab that locks it into the front panel so it was flat, and then I repeated the steps. Just clamped this piece of wood. I needed to do this mainly because the doors are going to be a little bit inset, and obviously I don't want the shelf to interfere with that. So had to put the pinholes a little bit inset of the cabinet. That's how I accomplished it. Just clamped a piece of wood down, rode it along that, and still maintain the same spacing that I had on the other side so everything lines up good. Little progress, all stretchers with pocket holes installed, bottom secured and glued, and I have all of the pinholes drilled. What do these doors need to be? So I know I wanted to have obviously a gap in the middle and 2 gaps on each side. So I factored that into the measurement. So I'm just grabbing the total measurement, height and width, and that way I can kind of subtract the gaps that I wanted. I think I wanted like an 1/8 inch gap, and so cut the boards to that size. I needed to chop off the edge of the board. Like I was saying earlier, I like to make my panels oversized. It's a lot easier to take wood away than it is to put wood back together. It takes a lot of time and glue and energy, and it's just crazy, right? So I make everything oversized. Learn this lesson the hard way, but by building stuff oversized, it's easy. And now I can just cut the panels directly to the size. So not a ton that I had to take off, as you can see, really, really, really minimal coming off of there. But once I did that, everything was good to go. Hey to my friends over at Craig, hey, y'all mess with the boy. Y'all come on, man. Y'all send me some stuff. Let's do some work together. I love y'all's products. They work well. This is me using the concealed hinge jig. This allows me to get the European style hinges installed very easily. This is going to drill the holes perfectly. Has a little bumper on the top, and it's perfect every time. There's also a little drill bit that came with it to drill out the 2 holes that you secure it with, and they're in the perfect spot every time. Of course, I lost that drill bit the first time after using it, but any drill bit works once you get the shavings out of there. It's perfect. So vacuum those up, and it's perfect. It's good to go. Nothing really else other than installing the hardware itself. What can I say? I got thick arms. All right. You're not going to be able to see much of anything in this clip. I got big hands. I got big arms. Everything drilled. This you may be able to see a little something right here, but for the most part, I had to cut this clip out just because you're not going to be able to see what I'm really doing. All I'm doing is screwing holes and putting the screws in the holes. That's it. Very self-explanatory. If you have the drill bit that comes with the Craig jig, it's even easier, right? Like you don't even have to do these holes independently. Just testing out the soft close, jump right into assembling them to the cabinet. So I put the stretcher and the bottom piece at the same. I made sure they're at the same dimension for this purpose specifically. I wanted to be able to rest the cabinet door on there as I drilled the pilot hole and secured it. You absolutely have to drill a pilot hole here because it would be very, 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 very tragic if you split this piece of wood when you finally did all this work and got everything together. Like, I cannot emphasize how tragic that truly would be and how much rework you would have to do. So make sure you pre-drill your holes, especially when screwing into hardwoods, and should be very, 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 very tragic if you were to split this wood at this stage of the build. All right. Maybe wondering how I'm going to secure this cabinet to the wall. So this is going to be a floating modern console cabinet. You saw it in the thumbnail. It's going for modern, right? So I'm not going to have a base or anything like that under these cabinets. So this is called a French cleat. It's a 45-degree angle. It's very, very strong. If you didn't know, triangles are very, very strong shapes. Essentially what this is. All right. And so you're going to cut a board right in half. It doesn't have to be super big. One side of the 45-degree angle is going to be mounted to the bottom of the cabinet. The other is going to be mounted into the studs, into the wall. And when you put these two together, you'll see me do it here in a second. This creates a counter angle that's very, very strong. And whenever you put this onto the cabinet and you put this onto the wall, it's going to hold these perfectly secure. And that way, I could just leave it like that. It's plenty strong to just leave it like that. But I end up going in and screwing it into the walls just for a little bit extra, reassurance. I got kids and they be doing wild stuff. So make sure that it goes together. You can see that counter angle. One side will go onto the cabinet, the other side will go onto the wall. And that's how these are going to be hung together. Securing these is easy. Once I got them cut to size, I wanted there to be a little bit of wiggle room. But once I got these cut to size, I just used pocket holes again on the ends, and then I just clamped them up. So it's important to make sure you have the right side. So that part that's on the bottom is going to go onto the wall. So you want to make sure you're not putting the wrong side on the wrong side. obviously, right? Because then you're going to have a counter angle that's not holding anything, and the whole hard work that you did is kind of worth nothing, right? And it's glued, so then you got to cut it off, and you can't just take it. Tragic. Just that's the only word that comes to mind, tragedy, if you make this mistake. So please just make sure your angle is going in the right direction and you check it 3 times before, right? Before you solidify it and clamp it and all the things, make sure it's going in the right direction. This is going flush with the back because it is on the back of the cabinet, and this is what's going to be touching the wall. So you don't want this sticking out. You want it as flush as possible. Again, here, glue alone would probably be fine, but because I want this to be extra secure on all sections of the cabinet, I put pocket holes on the side and glue it. So just throw a couple clamps on there, and it's gonna hold it nice and secure until that glue dries. This next part is actually what I enjoy about building things the most, is having to think a little bit critically and figure out different ways to accomplish, things when you don't have the right tool. And so right here, the best tool would have been a hardware jig of some sort. There's a bunch of different ones you can get them. Probably will end up getting one soon, but didn't have one at the time of making this project. And so I ended up just using a scrap piece of plywood, drilled out the holes, and I tested it on that scrap piece with the actual hardware I'm using to make sure it worked and it fit. And so at that point, all I needed to do is just clamp that onto the door itself and drill some pilot holes and just drilled them through. Made sure to have a block. So you'll see me with this block that's in the back. That way I don't get any tear out as I'm exiting the board through that hole. But this was very simple. It worked really, really well. I would definitely do this again. Just a piece of plywood and make sure it was level and the same width, so that way when you flip it onto the other door, it's the same dimension from each side, and you don't have one that's too big or too little, and it's just perfect on either side of the cabinet. So this worked out really, really well. I would do it again. Just like that, I got them all done. All of them went together, used the same template for each one, and they all came out perfect, identical, same height, everything that you really want in your hardware. You don't want them to be lopsided. So happy with how that came out. And now I just had to take everything back apart. I also have some little pieces of tape just with some marker on there on each door, just so I make sure I put each door back in the right spot. It's pretty important. The hinges where the holes are drilled, they may be a little bit different on each one. So just to make sure everything goes back together good. And I got the spacing together. So just took everything apart and got ready to stain and finish all the pieces, put everything back together. I'm planning to do a detailed video of how my sanding process, my finishing process when I'm working on these projects. So I'm going to skip through this very, very quickly here. I did a little bit of sanding, I did a little bit of staining, and then I did a little bit of finishing. Once I got everything done on that side, I could move into installing. So unfortunately, I lost the clip where I actually lifted this up onto the wall. But all I did here is just find the studs, install the French cleat, and screwed it into the wall. So there's also a piece up above the French cleat that's just the cabinet. I also screwed that into the wall just for a little bit of extra assurance. And that led me right into my next step, which was putting the top onto the cabinet. This was a pretty satisfying moment because you could see all that hard work starting to pay off. Just set that on top, see how it's going to look. Measurements were good, dimensions were good. Everything fit against along the wall nicely as well. So then I just needed to screw it in. Just threw in a few screws up into those stretchers like I was talking about earlier. Pre-drilled again, emphasis on the pre-drill. Make sure you pre-drill. Pre-drilled the holes and secured it. And that was pretty much it for the top. Then I can move on to installing the doors. This is going to be another example of hard to see, right? I'm all in the way. You can't really see, bad camera angle, all of the things. But we're putting the doors back on the hardware. I'm making sure to keep note of which door goes where. It's pretty important at this point. You don't want to put doors in the wrong spaces, wrong hinges, locations. Everything goes back in nice and easy. I just pre-drilled the holes were already pre-drilled, so I just needed to put the screws right back in. I kept them in a bag, kept them nearby. Once these went on, the project was pretty much done. And just like that, we got another project wrapped up. If you found this video entertaining or if you learned anything, please make sure you like and subscribe. It's just going to allow me to keep making videos like this and reach more people. So I appreciate you for hanging with me. And until next time, keep building.